and extend to all of you on behalf of the committee greetings for New Year 2019. I am Bridget Anizet George, the chairman of the Committee on Public Administration and Appropriations. The Committee on Public Administration and Appropriations has a mandate to consider and report to the House on A, the budgetary expenditure of government agencies to ensure that expenditure is embarked upon in accordance with parliamentary approval. B, the budgetary expenditure of the government agencies as it occurs and keep Parliament informed of how the budget allocation is being implemented. And C, the administration of government agencies to determine hindrances to their efficiency and to make recommendations to the government for improvement of public administration. The purpose of the 26th public meeting of the Public Administration and Appropriations Committee for the 11th Parliament is to seek further information on the 2018 and 2019 expenditure and internal controls of the Ministry of Works and Transport as it pertains to the following: accountability and transparency, inventory control, internal audit, subhead 02 goods and services, subhead 04 current transfers and subsidies, subhead 06 current transfers of statutory boards and similar bodies, subhead 09 development program consolidated fund and infrastructure development fund. The committee is desirous of hearing from the accounting officer and other key officials of the Ministry of Works and Transport to discover the challenges being faced and determine possible solutions to these challenges. The role of the committee is to assist the Ministry to achieve the efficient delivery of services while ensuring that expenditure is embarked upon in accordance with parliamentary approval. I therefore now invite members of the committee to introduce themselves and then the Ministry of Works and Transport.
Good afternoon. Wade Mark, member.
Good afternoon. Ayana Webster Roy, member.
Afternoon. Lakram Bodo, Vice Chairman.
Good afternoon. Brigadier General Ansel Antwine, member.
Clarence Rambarat, member.
And Madam P.S., I invite you.
Good afternoon. Sonia Francis Yearwood, Acting Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Works and Transport.
Good afternoon. Dahanmati Ramdat, Deputy Permanent Secretary, Acting.
Good afternoon. Chandrani Jagrup, Deputy Permanent Secretary, Acting.
Good afternoon. Olive Terrell-Moore, Director, Human Resource.
Good afternoon. Marissa Chattergoon, Auditor 3.
Good afternoon. Hayden Phillip, Program Director, Pure.
Good afternoon. Paula Weber, Director of Drainage.
Good afternoon. Navin Ramsingh, Acting Director of Highways.
Good afternoon. Wayne Coilas, Acting Chief Planning Officer.
Good afternoon. Steve Garb-Singh, Vice President, Insurance, NITCO.
Good afternoon. Trudy Gill Conlon, Acting General Manager, Port Authority of Trinidad and Tobago.
Good afternoon. Shelley Ayo Lovell, Accountant Executive 2.
Thank you very much. This meeting is being held in public and is being broadcast live on the Parliament's Channel 11, Radio 105.5 FM, and the Parliament's YouTube channel, ParlView. Viewers and listeners can send their comments related to today's inquiry via email, parl101@ttparliament.org, facebook.com/ttparliament, and Twitter @ttparliament. I therefore now will invite Mrs. Sonia Francis Yearwood, Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Works and Transport, to make a brief opening statement.
Once again, good afternoon, members. So the Ministry of Works and Transport is responsible for providing public infrastructure and transportation for the social and economic development of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. This ministry was established in 1956, and its services include, amongst other things, construction and maintenance of highways and major and secondary roads, construction and maintenance of major waterways, drainage systems, and coastal management in collaboration with stakeholders. Advice on the construction and maintenance of government buildings and facilities. Advice on maritime-related matters. Advice on the purchase, repair, and maintenance of the transport fleet of state agencies. Traffic management. Registration, classification, licensing, and inspection of vehicles. Issuance of driver's permits. Enforcement of laws under the Motor Vehicle and Road Traffic Act. Management and control of shipping within Trinidad and Tobago waters. Registration, licensing, survey, inspection, and certification of ships. Enforcement of maritime laws, negotiating and monitoring of air services agreements. In fiscal year 2018-2019, the Ministry received an allocation of $3.5 billion, of which approximately 2.3 was appropriated to the recurrent budget, with the remaining sum being distributed between the Infrastructure Development Fund and the Consolidated Fund. The Ministry's capital program comprises of 81 projects, 32 projects under Infrastructure Development Fund and 49 under Consolidated Fund. These projects are geared towards strengthening the National Transportation Planning Framework, improving access to public transport services, enhancing the efficiency and effectiveness of the national transport system, improving the regulatory framework for the national transport system, improving the efficiency of the Port Authority and expanding the port's infrastructure, transforming and modernizing the licensing office, modernizing the air transport infrastructure, and enhancing the transportation services between Trinidad and Tobago, the construction and maintenance of bridges and landslips, the alleviation of flooding, and the improved safety mechanisms on the nation's roadways. In terms of the operations of the ministry, in listening to the chairman's opening remark, I almost said ditto, because it is our desire to ensure that we conduct all that we do in as efficient and effective and transparent manner as possible. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Madam P.S. Okay, so that I think following up from your opening statement, Madam P.S., in terms of your responsibility in discharging accountability and transparency, in your submission, you had set out in quite great detail the responsibility for recording, monitoring, reporting and reviewing the accounts of the Ministry of Works. And you highlighted the role of the Finance and Accounts Division in terms of monthly reports. And what I wanted to ascertain is, in terms of these monthly reports, when was the last monthly report submitted and for what period?
The last monthly report would have been for December.
Yes, for December. And what is the time span between, so that the reports are after the fact? What is the time period between, that lapses between the end of the month and the submission of the report?
It's generally 1 week.
1 week, okay, thank you. And in terms of the report for December 2018, have you observed, have you made any findings with respect to whether your ministry is on track with respect to expenditure? Have there been any discrepancies?
There will be discrepancies between what we would have originally identified for our implementation program from September 2018. The main causal factor actually would be in terms of the release of funds. I hesitate because I sometimes think, it's a bit repetitive making that statement. And what we try to do is we try to adjust our program as the quarters go to revise what it is we plan each year based on how the funding is released and how implementation proceeds.
Okay. And therefore, I guess the conclusion that I may draw from that, because I see you have, if I widen it a bit, you have a list of projects, and I guess your projects would have certain startup dates. I see they have certain priority areas. Would that, how is that impacted by your releases?
Well, it's directly impacted based on our ability, one, to actually engage in contracts, and our ability, secondly, to ensure that the contractor is working at a certain speed, because we would have a cash flow that we would have agreed upon based on the signed contract. And of course, we would have, in certain instances, direct bullet payments, or we may have payments based on actual delivery. And if we are unable to do that, then we would kindly ask the contractor, first of all, if he could continue while we do the paperwork. And then after that, we may have some slowdown in terms of activity.
Have you had any instances that you could refer to where, based on your inability to pay the contractors in accordance with your contract, that work has actually ceased?
We have instances under our bridges, landslip, and traffic management program. We have instances under our PO program. We have instances under our coastal program. We can actually provide you with a list.
Thank you very much. Okay, and a bit more about your oversight in terms of your responsibilities for the number of state agencies under your purview. And I recall in your submission referring to the State Enterprises Performance Manual being used as a tool for you to carry or discharge your responsibility for oversight. In terms of, are there any agencies under your purview? There are certain reports they are required to submit, and if I went to the manual, let's say, for instance, there are these administrative reports that are supposed to be submitted at the end of June. They are supposed to be board minutes submitted within a week of confirmation, and monthly cash statements of operations and so on. Are there any state enterprises under your oversight where you found that they have been delinquent in providing the relevant reports as required in accordance with the State Enterprises Performance Manual?
Chair, I wouldn't say delinquent. Sometimes there may be a bit of tardiness, and it happens, but not delinquent. We have not found that the state enterprises, once we write and identify what it is that they're supposed to send, and then follow up in terms of timeliness, they normally respond.
Would it be fair to say that as we speak, you would generally see that they are all compliant at this time with their various reporting requirements?
I believe we may be out an administrative report here and there, but in generality.
Okay, and I understand that you accept that there is a responsibility on your part to sort of guide them along.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Member Mark?
Yes, thank you. Welcome again. In a period of economic stringency, I observed that the ministry has embarked on a number of measures which are designed to reduce what is called unnecessary expenditure, and at the same time to increase revenue collection. So for example, in your quest to generate savings in the area of reduction, you have been using technology in the context of what is called coal-in-place recycling and milling, establishment of data collection systems to inform future project developments, such as the Comprehensive National Coastal Monitoring Program and the installation of loop detectors. Now, some of these programs are pending. They haven't been effected. But could you share with us whether any savings have been realized thus far, given those expenditure reduction strategies that you have embarked upon? And what is the anticipation if none has been realized for fiscal 2019?
Okay, thank you, Member. In terms of the first item, you identify the coal-in-place milling. I'm told that that has resulted in approximately 30% reduction in costs in that particular aspect. I'm also advised that there are other attendant costs, because if you can reduce the amount of asphalt that has to be brought to the site, there are environmental savings and social savings. There are some other areas that the different divisions have been utilizing, and I will let Mr. Philip from the Pure Unit just go into a little more detail, because if I start speaking to you about the difference between base course and other areas of road paving, I might get it wrong. So I will let.
Afternoon, Member. Approximately 5 years ago, we would have started to see how we could reduce price in our road infrastructure. Bitumen asphalt is the most expensive component of road works. By doing research and using new technologies, what we found was doing coal-in-place recycling. What exactly it is, we are using the existing road material. If you look at our roadways, 10, 20, 30 years of rehabilitating, more asphalt, more aggregates. If you go the traditional way, what you do is you go and you excavate and take away all this, what we consider black gold, dump it to bring in new material. What we have been doing is what we call coal-in-place recycling, where we do test pits on the roads before. We analyze the strength of the road, and we know the strength we're expecting. Based on that, we do additives, where we add like cement, lime, and bitumen, and we actually recycle the material that's there. Tests have shown that we end up with greater CBRs than when we bring in aggregates from the quarries. We actually get about a 25 to 30% savings. We have even gone further now. Most of the people driving around the country will see us milling roads, and we have all the material piled up and people wanted to use. Well, basically, that is what we call our black gold stockpile. We're actually using that recycled aggregate product, and we're actually using that. And okay, we're doing a pilot project now at the Wali Nagar site there. We have an at-grade interchange that you would see soon coming. Every layer of that is done by new technology. So the sub-base, instead of bringing in pit runs and depleting your quarries, we actually use this wrap material with cement to form the sub-base. We again use the same wrap material with bitumen to form the base. Because you have such a stronger road pavement now, normally on a highway, you'll have 6 inches of asphalt. We only need to put 2 inches of asphalt. So the savings is just not monetary, but just your trucks going to and from your quarries and damaging your roads, all the energy associated with mining and all of that is gone. So basically, and it's a work in progress, and we continue every year to improve on it. So hopefully that savings will even go more than 30% once we continue using it.
Could you share with this committee how long this process has been going on? And could you give us, in value terms, what has been the savings? You may not be able to quantify, as you said, everything, but certainly you must be able to give us an appreciation of the dollar value that you, when I say you, the ministry, would have realized in this particular new process that you all would have embarked upon. You want to share with us?
Yeah. Okay. The first major project we would have done with that would have been the widening of the highway from 2 lanes, or basically 1.5 lane, from the Grand Bazaar intersection to Chaguanas. You all can remember how bad that road was, and we continue paving and paving and paving. So we did that coal in place recycling. As I said, it's like 25 to 30%. If it was 10 million, it would have cost us 7 million instead. We have all those things quantified that if you need the information, we can provide that information. And like we had an area between UE and QREP where we did some work, and lots of people thought, well, the ministry was accepting bad work. It wasn't that. It's just that we didn't want the contractor to go and do his repairs using that old, the old technology. So if you notice now, we would have came out there a couple nights, and we do all this work in the nights to stay away from the traffic. And if you pass in that area now, you see the road is, we have done it on the St. Helena bypass, done it on the Beetham Highway, and we're actually getting better results. We're monitoring it over the years, and we are getting longer life.
Now, that would be work executed internally through PURE. But when we engage, let's say, contractors to deal with other rehabilitation of highways and byways, could you share with us what impact in terms of cost the closure of Petrotrin and the supply of bitumen from Lake Asphalt will have on the cost of rehabilitating and even constructing new roads and highways to the Ministry of Works and Transport? You want to share with us that new development?
Just 1 minute, Member Mark, so to ensure that we remain in with this, what we're talking about is if there has been an impact in the cost of bitumen and how that impact affects their costs and this cost savings, if any, in coal milling. We're not really talking about Petrotrin here. We're talking about bitumen being imported. Am I correct? Thank you.
Okay. Bitumen was like $19 a liter. Then at the turn of the year, it went to 22. The projected cost, if you buy it locally, was proposed to be like $27. But the minister went to cabinet and they approved to, I don't know if I'm using the right word, but to open the market where contractors can bring in their own bitumen. And a few of them have, and they are able to keep the cost down by bringing in the bitumen. Because they wouldn't pay the local duties. The CARICOM duties is 15%. Automatically, 5% could be deducted without going to CARICOM. And contractors have started bringing in bitumen at a price where even the works that they have tendered before, they can stay within that cost. I don't know how it will be going forward, but so far, all the feedback that we have gotten with our surveys is that they are able to bring in the bitumen at a price to keep the bitumen price, the asphalt price stable at the moment.
The other question I'd like to raise, that's a very interesting one, but I wouldn't deal with that right now. The other area I wanted to clarify is this whole question of coastal erosion and mitigation strategies to address that. I observed that you are going to be engaging some consultancy services with a view to addressing and implementing a coastal monitoring system. Would you want to share with this committee what, first of all, where are we with this coastal, or engagement, I should say, of consultancy services, the monitoring of coastal erosion? And would you want to share with this committee, from your experience, the ministry's experience, what has been the experience as it relates to the level or the extent of the erosion of our coastlines, given what has been happening over the last few years?
Well, that doesn't fall under my remit, coastal. So the question will be passed on just now. But in the case of the pure unit, all designs, we don't pay consultancies. All our designs, project management, project supervision, everything is done in-house. Okay?
Yes, Member Mark. That particular project, the contract was awarded. I think the start date was Monday, and it is expected to continue over a 3-year period. It is intended that we would get substantial information which we would normally require in any project that we are going to do along the coastline. So the monitoring system will be giving us that information on a consistent basis. At the end of the 3-year period, it is expected that it will be something that will continue, but with local.
Would you want to share with us which agency or organization or company would have won that contract for the coastal, for the consultancy services, and the value associated with that? And maybe you can probably share with us what are the areas that are being targeted for priority, given what has been taking place on our coastlines.
Okay, if my recollection serves me, that project is in the vicinity of $22 million. The area for first priority, I believe, is the east coastline in the eastern area.
Yeah, but could you tell this committee which company got that $22 million contract? Would you share it with us?
So I'm trying to rack my brain as to the exact name of the company. It's not coming to me right now, member, but I will, if I remember it before we are through, I will give it to you, or I will send it to you.
Yeah, well, if you can remember, you could always give it in writing. Madam Chair, I just have one other area, if you'll allow me before.
Ask the Member Mark. Is there other members who I'd like to invite? Okay. I know that you have a very wide scope of questions, so I'll bring you back on the next occasion. Member Rambarat.
Thank you very much. I see you are making some progress in the removal and disposal of the wrecks. Now the numbers, we have some numbers here where you're removing, or in some cases have removed 14 derelict vessels and 10 derelict vessels. But how does this compare with the number that has to be removed?
I have to go just a little deeper in my documents to get the actual numbers. The contract is delayed somewhat. There's an approximate 6-month delay on the contract, but we are targeting to have the contract completed by, I would think, by August. Let me just get the exact number for you. Yeah. Okay. So the intention is for approximately 24, removal of 24 wrecks.
Member Bodo.
Sorry, with regards to your submission on the increase in revenue collection, and in particular with regards to the amendments to the Motor Vehicle and Road Traffic Act, can you give us an indication of what progress has been made with the legislation, just for the public's interest, and the introduction of the fee structure? Can you update the committee and the public as to where we are with that?
So in terms of the legislation, we are fairly close to implementation. We have some internal areas that we are present dealing with. In particular, the amendments will bring about certain changes in terms of how we do fixed penalty, how we do our red light and spot speed systems. So in order to do that, we have to have a close working relationship between the judiciary, ourselves, and a provider. Namely, in this instance, we are looking at TT Post. Within the ministry, we are putting the things in place. In particular, we have gone out for a software management system to manage that relationship between the entities. It is expected that contract should be awarded this month, and it should take a 6-month period. At the same point in time, we are implementing a traffic enforcement unit in order to manage the new set of activities that will come out from the Act. And that we've already gotten the structure approved, and we believe we've gone out to advertise for the positions, and we've gotten the salary ranges approved.
Thank you. The traffic management unit is a new unit within the ministry, I'm taking it. And in view of the traffic situation
the traffic enforcement
unit. Yeah.
Unit.
So can you explain perhaps a bit more? I'm sure that the public will be interested in that.
So the Traffic Enforcement Center unit will be a new unit within the ministry. What is intended is that no longer will there be a need for a manual identification of road, I almost said road abusers, that's not the word, but infractions. When we come online with the spot speed system, it will be an automatic identification. So it's a red light camera and a spot speed system that we'll be implementing, and it will be everything will be automatic, and there will be a unit that can actually stay and view the infractions to identify whether or not it was an actual infraction, because it's not just that you've been picked up by the camera and we give you a ticket. So that unit will view the infraction, will indicate whether or not the infraction has taken place before a citation is issued.
How long do you anticipate for this unit to be functional?
It is all tied into the other aspects, specifically the software management system that we are now about to issue the contract for. That software management system, once the contract is issued, we estimate it will take 6 to 7 months. We have within the contract document that there may be certain aspects of it that we can bring on board even before that time, but that is the sort of time limit that we're looking at.
Can you tell us how many intersections currently have the spot camera at the moment?
I believe it's 6. One. We have the pilot project has 2 sites at this point in time.
And how many do you intend to roll out eventually? And how long will it take?
35. We plan to do 35.
And what time frame do you have for that?
Well, we are trying to we are dovetailing everything in terms of bringing on as we bring on the software, we bring on the cameras as well.
Can you share with us what the challenge is? Because, you know, every time someone breaks a red light, there's a potential for a life to be lost. So I would think that this is something that would be given priority. So what would be the challenges in terms of getting those intersections, the cameras, you know, as soon as possible, as quickly as possible?
Let me take it from a technical standpoint and then from maybe administrative standpoint. So I will let the Director of Highways speak from a technical standpoint, and then I will come back.
What we did in the Ministry of Works on our intelligent transportation system is we have deployed what we call a pilot red light site. That site is right in front of the Parliament building on Rice Road, where we have 2 cameras. So the reason for deploying a pilot is really to see for ourselves how the technology works under local condition. It is fully remote because it captures violation 24/7. So the camera worked well. In terms of local conditions, for the last 3-4 years, we had no problem with maintenance for the camera. So the camera could be a standalone camera. In terms of the technology that we use to remotely send the violation, because what it does, it captures a photograph of the violation, and it tells you the speed of the violation. It sends that photographs remotely to our National Traffic Management Center. At the center, we have a software that is linked to the licensing office. So immediately, you look at the vehicle, you see the registration number of the vehicle, it connects to the license database, and we know immediately who owns the vehicle and the address of the vehicle. So during the pilot phase, all those technology worked well. So we are fully confident that when we deploy the 35 site, we have no problem with the technology. And that is why one of the problems we had is that in having people on the center to review the violations, and that's why the ministry formed this enforcement unit, which will be a unit dedicated only to process the violations. So from where we stand, the technology has been proven and tried in a local condition. And once we get the administrative systems in place, right, I think that the process will work seamless. We have some information in the amount of violations. We capture I think it's about 72 violations per day on each one of the cameras, right? So there's a lot of infringement in terms of people who break the red light. So in my view, the technology has been proven and it will work well. Now, using the same approach, we have deployed 4 spot speed cameras. 2 was done at El Socorro site, just at the intersection of El Socorro opposite Wassa there. That has been in operations for the last 3 years. And then last financial year, we deployed 2 at Twin City. So we have identified 10 sites for these cameras, and the sites selected are sites which are accident black spots. These are the sites along our major highway that we have the most amount of accidents. Parallel to that, again, the legislation is being put in place, and the intention is once the legislation is in place, the technology will be there for immediate enforcement.
Member Antwine?
Good afternoon. In fiscal 2018-2019, the ministry received an increase in the overall allocation in respect of drainage division of almost $90 million. And looking at your submissions, you see there are quite a number of projects that include the rehabilitation of river inverts, sidewalls, construction of reinforced concrete retaining walls, construction of gabion basket walls. And looking at your list of projects, I'm seeing in terms of the silting, just in Port of Spain, the silting of number of streets in Port of Spain. And my question is, what percentage of the allocation is reserved for the silting of the rivers in Trinidad and Tobago?
So the silting of rivers we do under 2 votes, 09, and certain projects which require more than 1 piece of equipment we do under 28. This year, I think we got a little over $1 million under 09, but under 28, we got 90, a little over $90 million, 110, give or take 20. So we got 110 million under 28. We found that based on the program we would like to do this year, the under 09 allocation was not sufficient, and we have already signaled to Ministry of Finance, who has agreed, and we have moved money from 28 to 09. The reason I'm responding in this manner, member, is because what we are seeking to do is, once we have identified the program that we need to do as a priority, we are going within our overall allocation, and we are seeking to move funds to the most critical area. So if I were to say to you that what was identified was 5% or 10%, it would not be accurate, because as we do the program, as we identified critical areas, we are going in our allocation and we are moving money to ensure that we get the job done.
But is there a systematic desilting of rivers, especially in flood-prone areas? And is the allocation for that, is it enough?
So yes, we do have a program that is based on a systematic analysis of what is required. The allocation identified this year was not enough. So that's why we are seeking to move funds from other areas into that allocation.
Just following up for Member Antoine. Madam Pierce, would all rivers be under Ministry of Works and Transport, or do some rivers come under, let's say, Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government?
Well, I'll let the Director of Drainage respond. Okay.
The major watercourses come under the Ministry of Works and Transport. Minor channels and so, some of them would come under the regional corporation, and in cases where you have watercourses alongside the highways, they come under the highways division. Some other channels, agricultural, may come under Ministry of Agriculture. So you have more or less 4 different agencies dealing with watercourses or channels.
Thank you very much. Member Boodoo?
If I can just follow up on that, Director. That is sometimes a challenge to me as a member of Parliament to determine which drain belongs to who. Is there a system in place, to coordinate or to assign responsibility? How does it work in practice?
For instance, within, let's say, urban areas, more than likely they would be under the Ministry of Rural Development. As I said, the major watercourses, the bigger ones that carry named watercourses per se, they come under the Ministry of Works and Transport, Drainage Division.
Let me ask you it another way.
Yeah.
Who is ultimately responsible for resolving whenever there's, some doubt or confusion as to where it belongs? Because sometimes the councillor will say it's not theirs, and vice versa, and so on. It's a practical problem on the ground we face each day as an MP.
Well, once there is an issue, both parties would meet and determine who has responsibility for it.
Okay, Director, maybe you could supply us with what are the major watercourses. I mean, I could sit down here and figure maybe Digo Martin River and Maraval River and so on.
Yes.
But that might help. All right? So maybe you could supply that to us through the PS.
Sure.
And we give a timeline. Member Webster Roy?
Thank you. Madam PS, internal audit units are very important as they play a significant role in strengthening internal operating system. What is the current complement of your internal audit unit?
Okay. At present, I believe the complement is 22. We have 22 auditors.
Is the unit fully staffed?
In terms of the auditors?
Yes.
Yes, I believe we may have one position.
Only one position to fill?
One vacant position.
Okay. What type of training would have been scheduled for the auditors as well as the support staff in the unit for this fiscal?
So for this fiscal, what we are trying to do is to find, one, we are approaching the Auditor General in terms of whether or not they can provide us with specific public service auditing assistance training. And we have been trying to see if we can find an external agency who can provide. Once again, I'm sort of honing in on specific public service auditing.
There's an established schedule of the different programs or areas you want to cover?
So we know the areas that we would like to cover. It's more or less mainly in the area of risk-based auditing. Okay. But in terms of the actual programs, we are still seeking to get that identified in terms of what is actually what can be provided.
Okay. I have one other question. I know usually you would have to provide a work program. Was a work program developed already and approved, and how far are they in terms of implementation?
So we have a 2018 work program that was done and approved, and the manner in which it was done, it is a rolling program. It covers a number of years. So it has gone over from 2018 into 2019, and then 2019 into 2020. Normally what happens is that I would meet on a yearly basis at the beginning of the year, and we would go over what has been done prior and what were some of the issues in terms of getting things done, so that the program for the following year would then be updated based on that. We do have some challenges in terms of the skill sets that may be required for auditing within a ministry such as ours. So we don't have within the audit department itself someone with a technical engineering background, which is all quite required at times. So, however, how we've sought to deal with that is that we've sought to identify teams where we have individuals from some of the other divisions when we have certain types of auditing projects to be done, to allow the auditing section to get that skill set by pooling resources, yes.
Madam PS, I just want to carry us back a bit backwards when we were talking about your efforts to increase revenue. And we placed a lot of emphasis on what was planned for on land. But I saw a very interesting submission with respect to cold stacking. And I think it is something that I would like to hear you expand on. I think it's something would be of great interest to the public. And to let us know where you are with what it is first, the opportunities and the sort of revenues you expect from it, and where you are with the legislation which will support coal stacking.
So coal stacking speaks to when you have a ship that the owner no longer requires at that point in time. So when it was first explained to me by the Maritime Services Division, I said to him, it's almost like a rest home for ships, almost, so that the ship is not in direct use. There is a minimal staff on board, and they anchor off the shores, and they pay us for that privilege. So at this point in time, we have a policy that has been approved. We also have a first set of payments that have resulted based on it. We are working on some more detailed legislation in terms of how it should be further operationalized I understand we recently the Ministry of Trade in putting out one of their documentation on the services that provided by Trinidad and Tobago. They have placed that we are offering coal stacking services. So we are expecting that this area will increase as it is broadcasted more and more that we provide those services.
In terms of is there legislation required to support that? And if yes, where are we with the drafting and finalization of that legislation?
I am told that there is legislation at the AG's office, and the work is being undertaken between our ministry, legal department, our Director of Maritime Services, and the AG's office.
Now, coal stacking is going to be limited only to the Gulf of Paria?
Well, that is one of the areas that has to be finally decided upon based on the policy document. If I recall, that is the area that has been identified.
Okay, thank you. And I want to shift a bit in terms of, I see that you do have in place in the Ministry a conflict of interest framework. And I would like to ask if there have been any recent instances of conflict, and if there have been, what steps have been taken to resolve it?
Well, you say recent, and we really have not had anything recent. We have sought to strictly enforce the CTB guidelines in terms of, particularly for procurement and people on evaluation committees, that they sign the conflict of interest documentation. I'm not sure if it's simply because we've been making sure that that happens, that we haven't been seeing anything or finding anything, but we have had no recent.
And I think I'm using recent, like say the last year to 18 months.
Well, that's as long as I've been in the chair, so
Thank you. Dr. Bodo.
Yeah. Madam PS, I just want to ask something on highways with regards to your submission, and I note the increase of 91 million. And I note also that a road condition survey was conducted in 2016
yes.
for all roads in the country. Can you indicate, how regularly road condition surveys are done, or if there's a program, an ongoing program?
So the Director of Highways normally would try to do one every 2 years. So that's our basic standard. At the same point in time, we also have our road supervisors whose part of their remit is in their area, they are supposed to be driving the roads to seek to identify any new areas of denigration that may be found.
So it's every 2 years means that there's one about to be conducted?
Yes.
All right. And if I may just draw your attention to the details of Appendix 1. And I note that the projects are listed by constituencies, or districts rather, sorry. And I'm just looking at the second page of Appendix 2, Appendix 1 as I have printed here. Uriah Butler Highway, item number 6. It's an item for $2.5 million, and it regards the removal of cable barriers and replacement with concrete barriers. Can you shed some light on exactly what is that designed to achieve?
So I'll have the Director of Highways.
Sure.
Yeah. Basically, I didn't see the line item, but basically the cable barriers has proven to save lives, because since we have installed the cable barriers, we had no crossovers and no deaths. However, it is costly to maintain, right? So it increases what you call a recurrent expenditure. So in the Ministry of Works, we have to develop a plan to ensure that we could reduce the cost of maintenance in the long term. So we have developed this plan where we will fill in the medians of the highway, at least on the UBH and Solomon Hochoi Highway. At the same time, we'll widen the road to 3 lanes and use what you call concrete barriers. Now, concrete barriers is another technology that is available to prevent crossovers. It is quite effective, and it results in less maintenance costs to the agency. So we have started that program using a percentage of the money we got this year to deal with that issue we have.
So that's just going to be limited between Chaguanas and Grand Bazaar?
Yeah, where we have the cable barriers. Yeah.
What about the cable barriers from Chaguanas to San?
No, the entire section
is going to be done in
so
that
we
way.
have developed a program. It's really a 3-year program where every year we will have to replace the barriers with something that requires less maintenance.
Yeah, but in terms of safety for motorists, in terms of encountering a concrete barrier as opposed to a cable barrier?
No, as I say, there are various type of technologies available, right? If you drive any developed country, you will see commonly used in medians, separating two highways, you will see the concrete type barriers, right? These barriers are proven to be able to, they are designed to take an impact from an errant vehicle and to straighten the vehicle back onto the lane so that the vehicle would not cross or go across.
Okay, thanks.
Member Antwine?
I just follow up. In your response, you said there was limited funding in previous years that resulted in a backlog of routine work and a deterioration in the road conditions based on the road condition survey. My question is, was additional funding provided to deal with this backlog? And if so, is there a reprioritization of the routine work to deal with the deteriorating road condition? Because there's a lot of complaint, especially among taxi drivers and so forth, that the bad road conditions is increasing their cost in terms of their vehicles, as the case will be.
So we did get increased funding under 28 road this year, which we intend to utilize to assist in some of these areas.
Member Mark, I must commend you for your patience.
Thank you very much, ma'am. I just would like to follow up on what my colleague Ayana Webster-Roy raised about the internal audit function. I know that the permanent secretary would receive on a monthly basis compliance reports as well as special reports on what systems are in place, challenges to those systems, etc. Can you advise this committee whether you have been receiving these reports on a monthly basis? And could you also advise us when last did you receive these reports, both the compliance reports as well as probably special reports?
So in terms of the compliance reports, the compliance reports are done on a monthly basis. The last one would have been done for December. I want to just make sure that I leave no gray area in that the compliance reports do not necessarily come to me on a monthly basis. The compliance reports are done, and where we have any areas of non-compliance, the auditor has the authority to bring it into the head of that particular division. Once the corrective action is taken, then the matter is dealt with. And I would be advised immediately for that month if there is any difficulty. Other than that, I will get like a quarterly report. In terms of the special reports, we do have a special project on at this point in time, for which I do receive monthly reports, the last one having been received in December.
Would you want to share with this committee some of the challenges arising out of those reports, whether you can share the findings of those reports, or would you want to submit them directly to the chairman and to the secretary?
So, member, I can submit it directly to the chairman. Our areas of non-compliance sometimes has to do with keeping our vote books, may have to do with the correct authorization being provided or the level of staff having that authorization. But in general, it has to do with those areas in terms of compliance. In terms of the special reports, sometimes it may be operational. We are, at this point in time, our main area in terms of a special assignment being undertaken is with respect to URP projects and payment of previous year URP projects. So we do have projects dating back 3 to 4 years, and we are trying to ascertain the veracity of the submissions. So that is actually taking up quite a bit of the audit function at this time.
I'd raised the issue of coastal erosion earlier, and what is happening, seeing that we have given out a contract. Could you share with us, or the person who's assigned that responsibility, what is the state of coastal erosion briefly, and given the priorities, where is the priorities in terms of geographical locations in light of the consistent and persistent erosion to our coastlines? Could you share with us briefly that particular report or some findings?
Okay. So, remember, the Director of Coastal is not with us at this time.
Okay.
However, I will indicate that we have approximately 12 active coastal projects. We have them on all of the major coastlines, northwest, east. We have projects. One of the major rationale for the project that we have placed here in terms of the monitoring system is to do exactly what you're speaking of in terms of ensuring that we are targeting our projects in the correct area. At this point in time, a lot of it, of course, is due to the obvious line of sight erosion that you can see, but we really need to get that kind of data in order for us to target what we are doing.
Okay. The issue of revenue-raising measures, would you like to share with us what is the targeted revenues that the ministry anticipates raising, having regard to the implementation of a number of the provisions given the amendments to the Motor Vehicle and Road Traffic Act? I know for a simple, if somebody has a crack on their windscreen or they don't have a sticker on their vehicle, it is thousands of dollars. So at the end of the day, and maybe you can share with us, how many vehicles do we have on the roads of this country? And could you share with us also the compliance rate at this particular point in time? And finally, what is the revenue projection as a revenue-raising measure? Because you did say that's a revenue collection measure. Could you tell us how much revenue the ministry anticipates raising as a result of the implementation of this act?
Okay. So remember, the last figure I saw, I believe our vehicle population is in the vicinity of 1,094,000 approximately. That's registered vehicles, so we are not speaking about unregistered vehicles, which we have not been able to pick up with us yet, so that figure may go up. And when I say that, the next statement I'm going to make, now while we anticipate that yes, there may be increased revenue from the amendments to the Motor Vehicle and Road Traffic Act. That is not the major objective of the amendments to the Motor Vehicle and Road Traffic Act. The major objective is, and we are hoping will be, safer roads. Because our key focus here is compliance. We are seeking to encourage citizens to comply with the Motor Vehicle and Road Traffic Act. You made mention of the quantum of funding in respect of registering a vehicle or going for an inspection or not having the inspection on a vehicle. That is not what we are seeing as key. We are seeing as key that every vehicle that goes and become inspected, we are hoping will then be a safe vehicle. And we're hoping that a safe vehicle will not split on impact. It will not blow up on impact. It's the same thing in terms of the other areas that we're seeking to bring into being. So the spot speed, red light, the Director of Highways would have identified 72,000. Is it 72,000 a day? 72 per day, my apologies. We've averaged 32,000 per year at that one intersection. That is what we are trying to deal with. So in detailing the project profile for this particular project, we did not concentrate on possible increasing of revenues. However, if we look to extrapolate, if you have 32,000 violations at that site and the fine is 1,000, well, that will give you a figure. But I can't say that I have at my hand an estimate for increased revenue once the act is fully in place, because when we were doing up the project profile, that was not the main objective identified.
Could you share with this committee how many of the 1,040,000 cars on the road or thereabouts are over 5 years of age and therefore would require registration in terms of inspection and the placement of a sticker on their windscreen? Has the ministry done that analysis, an assessment, and evaluation?
Remember, I know we have those figures, which I can provide to you in writing. I don't have it off the top of my head.
Oh, you don't have that
No,
at
I
the
don't
moment? Okay. Yeah, Madam Chair, one point I want to raise before I pause to come back again. May I ask a point that was raised earlier? Do you think, Madam Permanent Secretary, through you, there's a need for some kind of coordinating mechanism to deal with this issue of drainage, the various river or water courses? We were told by someone a short while ago from your team that there are 4 ministries involved in this exercise. And you couldn't give us a clear understanding as in the event of some crisis emerging, who will take responsibility for this crisis? Has the ministries or have the ministries considered some kind of mechanism like WASA has done with Ministry of Works and Transport, where they have a coordinated mechanism? So as you dig up the road, you repave it, and there's a coordination there. Shouldn't we not have a coordination in terms of this question as well? What is the position of the ministry on that?
Remember, in terms of a crisis situation and coordination, the ministry relies on the ODPM for that function invariably. In terms of situations which occur on a daily basis or on a weekly basis. The ministry attends the meetings of the different local government bodies, as well as long as a matter is brought to the ministry's attention. So we do have that oftentimes. We will coordinate with the different agencies to ensure that whatever the water course is properly identified, to rectify whatever problem that has been brought to our attention.
Madam Chair, I'll pause for this time because I have a slew of other questions I want to clarify, but I wouldn't want to monopolize, as my chairman would indicate.
Member Boudou.
Thank you,
Member Ma.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam PS, again, I just want to go back to the Appendix 1 with regards to highways. And there is a project which is, the location is Taruba Link Road, and the description is widening of the roadway for 4 lanes, including an HOV lane, high occupancy vehicle lane, phase 1. It's listed in the district of Caroni in the constituency of Naparima. So I have 2 questions. One is if you can verify what is the location, if it's the same location I'm thinking of, and secondly, a bit more information on the high occupancy vehicle lane and how that is expected to function going forward.
So, member, I would, Vice Chair, I would ask the Director of Highways to give you a bit more details.
I must apologize, but that project is in the Victoria West District. Yes, it is Turbo Link Road by South Park. The objective of this project is that this road was repaired about maybe 5 to 10 years ago, and we have a considerable amount of traffic congestion on that road. So we had meeting and consultation with the police. Right now, we are doing what you call the designs to see if we could fit 4 lanes into that space that we have there with no shoulders. Right? The 4 lanes will allow 2 lanes of traffic when you leave the roundabout from the San Fernando bypass into the highway, and when you exit in from south, let's you say you're coming from Pinal and you exit on the ramp, you will have a dedicated turn to take you into San Fernando. So this is just one of the projects that we have to reduce and alleviate traffic congestion on the nation roads.
Director, if I may ask, I'm sure you're familiar with that terrain and the problems that road had before.
Yes.
In terms of movement and slippage of land and so on. So has that been taken into consideration in terms of extending the road? I know that was an ongoing problem which was fixed, as you say, about 5 to 10 years ago.
What happened, we are maximizing on the use of the existing paved area and trying to get 4 lanes
already
from
has
it.
a foundation.
Yes, which already was reconstructed by the Pure unit about, maybe that was about 5 to 10 years ago, and the solution that we used solved the problem that we were having in that area.
All right.
Right, so we're just using the existing road.
Okay, thanks. Just one more. With regards to the La Fortune Pluck Road, and I see you have a project strip paving to the roadway. I asked that only because I know sometimes with the occasional flooding in the Mosquito Creek, a lot of traffic uses that road to get to southern areas, Faizabad, Sipari, Pinal, and so on. Can you indicate the scope of the project and how soon you expect it to be started, or is it already in progress?
That is one of the projects. Again, this road do get a lot of problems during the flood condition. This road is subjected to flood for about 5 to 7 days. So you have section of the road that is in a deplorable condition. So the objective of this project here is just to deal with the areas that are in a deplorable condition. It will include rehabilitation, which will include deep patching of the road, strengthening of localized area, and strip paving.
Can you say when it will start?
This project is in what we call the development stage. Like I'm finalizing the designs and tender document. We hope that this will be implemented before the start of the rainy season.
Thank you.
All right, and Director of Highways, while I have you, I'd just like to ask some questions. Would I be correct in saying there would be 132 projects listed on your division?
Yes, based on the release that we got on the 28, which we call other contracted services, we have identified 127 projects to be executed.
127 projects. Okay. Would project screening briefs been done for each of these projects?
Basically, under other contracted services, this is really what you call a maintenance, right, kind of project. So what we do is that based on the condition survey, based on historical information, the Highways Division, we have developed what you call a 5-year road maintenance program.
Right.
And based on that program, we feed projects into this project. Right. So we broke up the projects into basically 5 categories, right? Basically, we had drainage projects. Drainage project deals with complaints from people, complaints from ombudsman, and areas where we need to protect the infrastructure from further deterioration. Road rehabilitation, that deals with critical area of the roads that were damaged due to floods or damaged due to wear and tear, normal wear and tear. So we have 40 projects in that area. Slope stabilization, which is landslips, that is a major problem for the Ministry of Works. So we have 27 projects in landslip area. Safety, we have 8 projects. Safety type projects deals with the cable barriers type projects. It deals with the concrete barriers, what we call the temporary concrete barriers we have in the Beetham Highway and on my West Mall that are continuously being knocked down by motorists, and it gets into the other lane and it poses a maintenance problem for us and a safety problem. So the plan is to remove those temporary concrete barriers and replace them with permanent type barriers. Right? And then the emergency work. The recent flooding, we did have a lot of damage to our infrastructure. We have dedicated 14 such projects to deal with the emergency that happened last financial year. And then we have projects to alleviate traffic congestion along the highway. We have dedicated 5 projects.
Okay. And I'm happy you mentioned emergency works because I wanted to know what was the difference between emergency works and urgent works?
All right. Basically, when, like I'll give an example of the highway. So we will get a report of a sinkhole on the highway. Generally, they say it's a sinkhole. When we go and investigate it, we realize it's a failed culvert. Now, we cannot leave the highway, one lane of the highway closed, because that will be detrimental to motorists and the whole of Port of Spain. So overnight, using what you call emergency procedures, we go in and we do some temporary works, right? And the temporary works are done overnight to ensure that by morning, motorists can get into Port of Spain. So once the urgent works are complete, the emergency works are completed, we now have to go and do the engineering. We do detailed inspection, find out what was wrong, size the culvert, determine what needs to be done, and then we carry out the work as a means of urgency. So the temporary work don't last, they just last about a month or 2.
So the temporary work are the emergency, considered emergency.
Yes.
So when I see here, Uriah Butler Highway, 6 km to 7 km vicinity of Warner Village, emergency.
All right.
Does mean emergency works?
Yeah, what had happened there is that when we had the flooding on the highway was underwater for about 2 or 3 days. So we had damage to the existing road, right? But because of the fact that you could come in under emergency and do some milling and paving, right? We didn't need to do much investigation. We had to fix the road to make it safe for the motoring public.
So in those cases, according to this listing, those works were done?
Yes, those
works are done and completed?
Yes, those were done.
Okay, thanks. The other thing I wanted to ask, because you mentioned again that your selection went back to your road condition survey. I had observed in the submission there was a statement with respect to there being some backlog because of, timing of releases, etc. The projects you have identified for execution this fiscal, how would that deal with the backlog? Would it bring you into the real time? Because you said this was a sort of 5-year plan. Would it bring you up to date where you saw yourself, or would you still have a backlog?
No, based on the last condition survey that we did
in 2016.
And when we do our condition survey, we will basically go and inspect the health of the inventory items. So based on that, we'll have the number of culverts that need cleaning or changing. And we will develop what you call a 5-year program to change those programs. So what happened is that we will deal with the critical one this year. We will have a prioritization matrix that we will develop that will determine which are the ones we will do this financial year and which one we will defer for the next financial year.
So you're not dealing with road service?
No, basically, if you look at it, the areas I deal with in terms of road surface is the area that poses some safety issue to motorists. And remember, if I could capture a road at the early stage when there is cracks and I could put a tin overlay on it, I will protect the investment.
Right. So let me ask something. I am looking here, item 11. This is on page 1, project listing for fiscal 2018-2019. This is Mount Coco Road from Western Main Road, Diego Martin, to Saddle Road, Maraval. This is the entire Mount Coco Road, or is this just from Four Roads Junction to Maraval?
Basically, we would never have enough money to pave the whole of the road. Pure would do a section. I will come in and do a section which is patch paving based on the condition of the road. Right? So basically what we try to do is just try to improve the condition of the road so that the motorists can drive freely.
So as far as 11, maybe this is Mr. Phillips then. I don't know. Because it's coal milling and asphalt paving works. Right? That's under your program. So really what I want to know, what part of the road or what section is identified here?
This road is under what you call the development stage. So right now I will have the engineers going out, and based on the condition survey, they will identify the specific areas that need to be done, and then we go and do the critical areas.
So all you've really done here is identify the road?
Yes, that's what I did.
Okay, great. 12, which is the one immediately after, number 464 Sad Road, Boston, number 1. Is that around by Country Club there? Is that roundabout? No?
This project on Saddle Road is basically we have some flooding area is after Shakunia in there.
All right,
There's perennial flooding that happens at that area. There's water comes down from the roads. Detailed investigation suggested that the underground drains are blocked and so forth. So these are just localized repairs. If you look at the budget, 141, localized repairs to the drains and the area to prevent that flooding, that localized flooding in that area.
And the last question I want to find out, I don't know if it's you or Mr. Phillips. I will call it the overpass that takes you from Cocorite into St. James. Have I identified it sufficiently? I don't know if you call it a bridge. All right? I don't know what is the proper terminology. There are some steel, and this might not be engineering terms, but like girders, going across, which are covered from time to time, but which surface covering doesn't remain for long. We identify what we're talking about. One, is that sound? Have we done some recent assessment of the structural integrity? Thirdly, is it safe in terms of presenting a traffic hazard? Because I think there are about 2 of them running straight across. And how do we resolve it?
I have seen it. Basically, some of the joints are being exposed, and Mr. Ramsing supposed to send his gang, his maintenance gang, to patch it properly. That's what, but it's safe. It's just...
Yeah, but it's been patched repeatedly. Okay, and my own observation as a road user, I'm sure last year it was like that, patched and broke down again. You know, so I really am trying to find out how do we resolve that, because even if the bridge is sound, it is also a potential safety hazard for a driver.
As Mr. Hayden clarified, it is what you call the expansion joint that we do have in those bridges that was built before the 90s. When we put the asphalt, there is a temporary fix. Basically, what we need to do is we need to get in there and put back what you call a permanent joint. I will look at the area, and I will ensure that we do repair the joints in that bridge. But the bridge is structurally sound, right? It's just the joint we are talking about.
So I want to pin it down a little more, Mr. Ramsing. How soon?
Basically...
and don't tell me when we get releases.
No. Basically, what I will do, I will go out and have a detailed inspection because there are different type of joints, right? So we first have to determine what kind of joint they use in that area. And once I finish the investigation in the area, I will come up with the engineering solution and procure it.
So can I give you a month?
I think...
Not to resolve, but at least to communicate with us.
Oh, yes,
the solution.
Without a doubt.
And then the solution, when you tell me the solution in a month,
you
also tell me then when you will execute.
Yes, the permanent solution. But in the meantime, if it's as dangerous as you say it is, I will again carry out the temporary solution.
Well, I have no technical expertise. Okay, thank you. Dr. Bodo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam PS, I just want to draw your attention to the Wharves Division and the submission on the rent lease vehicles and equipment for a sum of $2,552,160. But in particular, to the fact that 4 Maxi taxis are rented at a rate of $100,000 per month, which means about $1.2 million per year in rental for 4 Maxi taxis. So my question really would be, can you give us a bit more information as to the basis for that sort of rental contract? And I'm thinking that you could perhaps buy 4 Maxi taxis for $1.2 million, and why would you rent why would you rent these instead of purchasing? In a situation where you're looking to save and get maximum value for money.
Yes, Vice Chair. The issue of the rental of the Maxi taxis it's a rental or procurement that takes place under the Port Division. So I will have the GM Ports respond.
Sure.
Good afternoon, panel. All right, so the rental of the Maxi taxis came into being in 2006. At that time, there was no transportation within the Port Authority. And in terms of health and safety and best practice and international standards, we should not have people on feet walking within a terminal. All right, so we would have had a management contract come in at that time, which would have been handling the cargo handling terminal to bring in best practice and that sort of thing. So there were tenders that were sent out and the Maxi taxi service was engaged. So the service, we have about 2,000 employees, about 1,200 within the cargo handling section, and we operate a 24/7 operation. The core purpose of the Maxi taxis are for the employees to transport them from Dock Road Gate to Westgate, which is near Movietown. You span about 1,500 meters of terminal, and it's to ensure that the employees get from A to B safely to get to all their points of operation. A feasibility study was done. It's been done a number of times in terms of rental versus purchasing the Maxis. However, the analysis has shown that the rental option is cheaper than purchase, because when we factor in insurance and we factor in maintenance and repair and all the associated costs with parts and that sort of thing, it is working out cheaper to rent on a monthly basis, on an annual basis versus purchasing. That's why we did not go the route, because we did look at purchasing vehicles. We even looked, in terms of auctionable vehicles being donated, and then we maintain it and that sort of thing, because vehicles do come onto the port. So that is the core purpose with employees. The other use of the service is also for our users, our port users. So we have brokers that come into the terminal to do business on a daily basis, to get car deliveries at the Spectrum, the western end of the terminal. They come to do transactions in the building. Again, they cannot be on foot. And so really, it was put in for operational efficiency as well as health and safety and best standard practice.
Thank you, Madam PS. And my question really wasn't as to justify the reason for the Maxis, but to look at the, in terms of rental versus purchase. And I see that you would have done a cost-benefit analysis.
Yes.
Would you be in a position to provide us with a copy of that cost-benefit analysis?
Yes, we can do so.
And the other question I would have here is the ministry reconsidering its position in terms of rent leasing? Is there any thoughts in that direction, Madam PS?
Vice Chair, based on the information that we've gotten, based on the feasibility studies, no. Because we are being told that if we go to purchase, it would be more expensive.
And have you had that? Have you yourself or have somebody in your ministry reviewed that cost-benefit analysis, or you're just going along with it?
Well, to be very direct, based on the questions asked by the committee, it sort of piqued our interest. So we have asked to get a copy of the cost-benefit analysis for our review.
Thank you.
Madam PS, might I ask, with respect to all the vehicles and equipment under here, if we can get, if you will share with us the cost-benefit analysis, because it appears that one has been done in respect of all the forklifts, the Maxi, the non-revenue vehicle. Member Mark?
Yes, sir.
I just would like to follow up on this matter. Madam PS, could you share with us whether from 2006 to 2018, and we are now into 2019, that owner of the Maxi taxi, or owners combined, would have enjoyed over $15 million. Now, at a time when the country is experiencing severe economic hardship. So I, like the chairman and my colleague, would like to visit that cost-benefit analysis. But further, can you tell this committee whether the same kind of arrangement has been in existence for Maxi Machinery, Southern Sales and Services, and J.W. Hamilton? How long have they been engaged on the wharf or the port in the provision of lease and rental services? Could you share with this committee if it was a recent matter, or is it like Maxi taxi arrangement over, well, a number of years, put it that way? Can you help us?
The information at our disposal, which was provided to the committee at page 36 of our submission, speaks to the engagement of Maxi Machinery over a 5-year period, Southern Sales over a 5-year period, and J.W. Hamilton from 2014, terminating in 2018. In terms of the level of detail over the 2006 to 2018 period, remember, we don't have that level of detail, but we will provide it to you in writing.
And could you also indicate to this committee what was the process of selection of these companies? Was it sole selective? Was it competitive bidding? Could you share with us? And when I speak to the issue as a member of this committee, engage over a period of 5 years for both Maxi machinery and Southern Sales, would you be in a position, or the person who works on the port, be in a position to indicate what period are we referring to over 5 years? Is it 6 years, 7 years, 8 years? Could you share with us?
And I will have the Alaxi GM Port to respond.
Okay. The Maxi taxi service, as indicated, that would have been via open tender, and those tenders would have been taking place approximately every 3 years or so. The equipment, the Maxi, I would have to get the information in terms of the tendering for those, but they would have, over 5 years, from my knowledge, it would have been possibly from around the same time, 2006. And again, we would have engaged, as I indicated, a management operator, an international management operator that came into the port, came into the cargo handling operations, and the objective of this company was to improve the efficiency, improve health and safety standards, and those sorts of things. And in terms of the rental of the forklifts was part of the improvement of the operations in the barrel shop, as in terms of cargo handling, in terms of safely handling cargo, and also as well as on the terminal. But some of the contracts would have been month to month in terms of a seasonal needs-be basis. So in other words, at Christmas time, when you have an increase in cargo, increase in operations, to be able to manage the operations efficiently, you would have a month-to-month engagement of the lifts. We've actually reduced the number of lifts because we do continuous assessment in terms of the needs of what is required. So if the volumes are a certain amount, then we would have a certain need in terms of the hiring of the equipment. If the volumes go down, we would reduce. And we have actually reduced the pieces of equipment in terms of the forklifts over the last couple of years.
You indicated to this committee that it is open tender. This 4 Maxi taxis that get 100,000 a month, they have been very lucky every 3 years to win again. Would you share with this committee if it is the same players involved, or do you have different players who have been able to supply these services?
Yes.
Can you tell us who are these Maxi taxi owners? Who are the people who own this fleet of Maxi taxi in the period that we are looking at? And maybe you can give us a brief and then put it in writing for us.
Right. So over the period, we would have, as I said, we would have had open tenders. We would have had 10 tenderers per open tenders, sometimes 6, sometimes 4, varying amounts over the periods of time. In terms of the contracts that would have been awarded, it would not have been the same company each time. Specifically, the names of the company, well, one was identified in the document, that is the current one. I don't have the names of all of the companies.
Well, you could supply that in writing. Yeah. But what about Southern Sales and Services and Maxi? Were they subject to open tender as well? And they were very fortunate, if they were, to just be winning from 2006 every 3 years, because we are talking about competitiveness and we are talking about cost reduction. I'm just wondering why, they were very fortunate to be winning every year. Am I wrong, or am I being misled?
In terms of the Maxi,
could you tell this committee, for instance, okay, from 2006, you had a tender in 2009, then you had one in 2011, then you had or 12, then in 15. Right. Could you tell us, for instance, how many companies would have bid, and how many? Right. And therefore, do you have that information? Which if you do, you can supply us in writing.
No, I don't have that information.
Well, would you be kind enough to supply us in writing?
Yes, we'll do that.
But, Madam Permanent Secretary, may I suggest, through the chair, that Trinidad and Tobago is under a lot of financial stress. And, when you analyze these figures, you're talking about millions and millions of dollars, which at the end of the day, a proper cost-benefit analysis may tell you that it's better we buy forklifts rather than to rent this. And vehicles, we can buy these things and maintain them. Or we can work with PTSC and get small minibuses to transport somebody from the North Gate to the West or whatever, rather than paying out these amounts of monies when we don't have it. So I think it is something that I would like to suggest that as Permanent Secretary, you pay some attention to. That is what I would like to submit to you. Madam Chair, I'd like to pause at this time.
Thank you very much, Member Mark. I might just want to ask one question. Wasn't there at one stage a port bus? Madam General Manager, do you know?
In my time in the port, I've been there 15 years, no, I'm not aware of a port bus, maybe before my time.
Okay, all right. Okay, so Member Webster, thank you.
Madam Chair, I think in terms of the port bus you might be mentioning, the harbour master. Yeah, that PTS, I know in Tobago we had the harbour master when the boats come in late, take people, not that? No? Okay. I want to go back to some of the projects, right? And I'm looking at the ones for to alleviate flooding in Port of Spain, and I wanted to know the status, please.
We have the two individuals who may be able to help you, Mr. Phillip and the Director of Training.
Yeah, with respect to the Port of Spain flood alleviation project, it's approximately 90% completed.
Okay, good.
The only thing outstanding is a pump that we're procuring now, but all the new drainage has been in place, all the new grills. We have cleaned the culverts, we've built a new detention pond as well as a sump. So by the end of the month, basically all the works on the roadway and the sump would be completed. It's just for us to wait until we get the pump to install.
And any timeline in terms of delivery of the pump?
Okay, what we did, we went out to tender locally.
Okay.
And we weren't satisfied with so right now in the back taking a new approach because most of the people saying 6 months, 8 months, all right, and the prices were sort of ridiculous. So we're looking at a new approach in the process of doing that to get a pump. And then we know the rainy season is not there, but it will be. We're expecting about 3 months' time, we should have those pumps long before the rainy season.
Okay, good. I have another question, and it's coming out from some comments on social media when drivers were asked to go and get the stickers. People were posting pictures all over with potholes and saying, well, if you want us to make sure cars are roadworthy, make sure the roads are car-worthy. What is the program in terms of repairing or patching potholes and that sort of thing?
Basically, using in-house forces, we do have 8 pothole patching gangs throughout Trinidad that carry out pothole patching exercise on a daily basis to keep, in an effort to deal with the backlog and the huge amount of potholes that we have on the road. In December, the ministry met with WASA, and we came up with a joint effort between the Ministry of Works and WASA, where WASA made a commitment that they will try their best to repair the areas that they're damaged to the standard in which the Ministry of Works expected to. And we at the Ministry of Works, we went out and we procured some contractors to to carry out additional pothole patching. So we have right now, the intention is to have 16 patching gangs throughout Trinidad and Tobago, and with the cooperation of WASA, we anticipate by the end of January, middle of February, we will have a good handle on those complaints of potholes.
Potholes, is it because of work being done by WASA, or is it because of what's the main cause of the potholes, the quality of the work in the first place?
About 90% of the complaints that we receive in the Ministry of Works about a hole in a road is directly attributed to WASA. Right? What we normally say is that if you go and the public, if a hole has straight edges and it looks uniform, there's a good chance that it's a damage done to the road surface by WASA. Right? We at the Ministry of Works, we always work closely with WASA. So if I have my patching gang patching any road, if I'm the Saddle Road and the Mount Cuckoo Road, we don't differentiate in the Ministry of Works. Once we have our crew on the road, we patch all defects on the road. Right? There's the other type of pothole that is formed due to the natural aging of the road and the effect of overloading and trucks, heavy trucks on the road.
Okay, I just wanted to ask something, and I don't know if this question would be Mr. Phillip or Mr. Ramsing. In terms of, road repair and technologies and so on, have we also ever considered using used tires as road surfacing material? It might be a very old technology now.
We have looked at it. As a matter of fact, we are still looking at it. The swim call had brought a piece of equipment to crush or cut the rubbers up, but the sizes that they are cutting it to, it's way too large to be used in asphalt. But we, at this point in time, looking at the feasibility of it, and even the Ministry of Works asphalt plan that we bought, we can get an attachment once we go through the feasibility where we can use the rubber in the asphalt.
And, Madam Chair, just
Yes,
to let you know that Kariri is also doing a feasibility study on the utilization of the tires for road repairs.
I saw that in local government in Australia in 2001. All right, and I want to ask something to the port in terms of, this is Madam PS 0200529, delivery of containers to container examining stations. I think it's on page 37 of your submission. And if I understand it well, the allocation for this is $4.5 million. And would I be correct in saying that this is an increase in the allocation from fiscal 2017-2018?
Chair?
Yeah.
The document, I believe, the document shows that it's an increase.
It's an increase?
No, the document shows the increase. However, that's the financial document. However, in terms of actual expenditure, it is not an increase. It was a timing issue.
Yeah, because it meant, of course, you could see why I was asking that in terms of the responses to the questions that followed. Okay, so that maybe we could clarify this in a further submission.
Yes.
Because it really raises a big question.
Yes, it would.
Okay. Thank you very much. Member Boodoo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to go back to Director of Highways and again to ask with regards the ongoing issue between who fixes which pothole. Would there be staff from the Ministry of Works and staff from WASA, maybe you can't answer for WASA, that would regularly inspect the roads and do surveys and so on an ongoing basis?
In the Ministry of Works, we do have what you call work supervisors, WS1 and road supervisors, and they are, one of their functions is to ensure that they drive the roads once a fortnight, once every 2 weeks, and identify the defects. Once the defects are identified, we basically prioritize it, and then we schedule a crew to go and deal with the damages. I was told, based on the meeting we had with WASA recently, is WASA have a similar system, right? Where they are aware of the areas that they need to repair. And they also have some teams that are dedicated for road restoration.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I would like to know, with respect to the flooding that took place in October of last year, particularly in Greenvale and Urupoon, what would have been the role of the drainage division in the construction phase of these projects?
You're talking about the developments. These developments were not constructed by the division. These are housing, Ministry of Housing, HTC housing developments.
So you all would have had no role in the construction of the drainage? Would you all have had to pass drainage plans?
Yes, we would have had to pass the plans for the infrastructure for those developments.
That would have been your role?
Yes.
And those plans were passed by you all?
The short answer, not for Greenvale.
Short answer, not for Greenvale?
Yes.
Okay. But for Urupoon?
Yes.
Yes. And therefore, in terms of your role in drainage, in ensuring that there's proper drainage and so on, and proper infrastructure, how are errant developers dealt with?
If I could outline how it goes, maybe the process could help. When a proponent wishes to do a land development, they would approach the Town and Country Planning for an outline or final approval. One of the conditions given by the Town and Country would be to probably come to the Drainage Division, probably WASA, Fire Inspectorate, and the like. Not in all cases, they may not always get the condition to come to the Drainage Division. But once a developer gets one of the conditions to come to the Drainage Division, they would now approach the division. We have a set of guidelines for developers in what we would expect in their submission. So the developer would then make a submission, designs, and so on. We will check it, and once we find that what they would have submitted, we would give design approval. All right? The proponent is now expected to go and build the infrastructure. Once that is completed, they would then approach the division, write a letter, and ask for an inspection for the infrastructure. An officer will then go out and inspect the infrastructure, and once we find it's in accordance with what we had approved, we would then write to the regional corporation and recommend for approval that particular development. Yes.
So in the case of Greenvale, is it that no condition was put to it to be sent to drainage?
Yes, but with Greenvale, by the time a document came to the division, Greenvale was maybe almost completed.
In terms of the drainage?
In terms of the building, everything.
Okay. And would there still have been a requirement for you to sign off on it then?
Well, right now, we had, after the flooding, they approached the division, and we had a meeting just about after the flooding, and we are working with them to find a solution to the problem at Greenvale.
Thank you, but I still, though, this is Mrs. Weber,
Yes.
Ms. Weber, I still didn't get an answer to the question. Until I understand now there's a solution. But I'm trying to find, lessons learned. How do we deal with this as a nation? So you get a submission, a condition that people come to drainage. It is well after the fact. What happens then? Do you go and inspect? Or because you say, well, do you say then it's not worth going and inspecting because it's already finished?
No. An inspection was made, as a matter of fact, advised to the HTC. In fact, they had written to the division outlining what they would do to, let's say, protect Greenvale. And they suggested building embankments and so on. However, I must say that the events of last year, October, it was very, very excessive. Nevertheless, we are, working with them. They have since made a submission to us, and we have since, gone through the documents. It's more or less like after the fact then. So, as it stands now, we are in meetings with them, and we had a meeting late last year to go through what their submissions.
I understand where we are now. I'm a little before that.
Yes.
So they come to you. This is before October 2018, if I understood you well. At some stage, the developer was sent to you, to drainage. Drainage at that stage knew that the development was more or less complete, if I understood well what you said to me.
Yes.
What happens then? Do you all go and inspect or not? In that particular instance, would you have gone and inspected then?
Yes, site visits were had.
Right.
And, they were advised.
Yes.
But they made a proposal that they're going to put embankments to protect Greenvale. And they were advised or agreed in principle, yes, but you need to make a submission to us, to the Drainage Division, what your design is for the embankments to protect Greenvale.
Did that happen? I'm trying to find out what is the role of the Drainage Division in all of this.
Yes, it does.
I'm not talking about October 2018. Going back to whatever time you're talking about.
Right. So they made a submission since, and we have given them a defects list, and they are yet to come back to us to give a final submission in.
Right. So at that stage, nothing happens?
I don't understand. At what stage?
Well, I am not talking October 2018, if I understand you well.
Oh,
or
well,
maybe I'm misunderstanding you.
The regional corporation is the body that could, because they are the ones who give final approval for developments.
I thought I understood you to say that the regional corporation will give final approval based on something that comes from you.
We will recommend. We will recommend to the regional corporation, but the corporation is the one that gives the final approval to the developer.
Right. So can then I conclude that the regional corporation could give final approval even without a recommendation from you? Can I conclude that?
Yes, it can happen, because not all developments would necessarily need to come to the division.
I think I understood that too. But what is missing for me, and maybe I am not understanding what you're telling me. You're telling me that initially nobody came to you. And I would take that, I would assume from that maybe no one was sent to you. Okay? Sometime thereafter, if I understand what you said, and maybe I've misunderstood, they were then sent to drainage. By the time they were sent to drainage, the development was almost complete. Am I recording you correctly?
By the time the documents came to the Drainage Division, the housing development was almost completed.
And that's where I get lost. What happened then? We're not in 2018 yet. Agreed? We're not in October 2018 yet.
No, we're not in 2018.
So when they come to you, everything they're on the ground. I understand you to say you do an inspection. You find certain issues.
Yes.
Okay? Certain recommendations are made.
Yes.
What happens? I'm talking from drainage perspective now.
Well, we had agreed with with them putting the embankment to protect Greenvale. The solutions, yes.
Did the solution occur?
Well, they have not come back to, I'm a bit confused.
No, I'm not. I understood you very well. You didn't come back. And all I'm asking is, what is your role then? Do you sit down and wait for them to come back?
Well, once we give a developer a defects list, we expect them to go, look at the designs, and then come back to us.
Right. And if they don't come back?
Well, we don't chase the developer, more if that's what you're asking.
No, I'm not asking about chasing. I just want to know,
if
they
don't
come back, your job is done. Would I be correct in that conclusion?
Well, the project is not approved. It's not. Yes, my job is done.
Sorry, I just want to follow up.
My job is done.
Member Bodo, Member Antoine, Member Mark, in that order.
Madam PS, I just want to ask, with regards to Madam Chair's last question, about no one having responsibility to follow up on a development. Do you think that is a satisfactory state of affairs? Or should there be some mechanism in place that once defects have been identified in a development, that there should be some mechanism, whether the developer comes back or not, to monitor that situation? Because we can have a situation where the developer chooses to ignore, and things happen, as we see, to the detriment of people and property.
Vice Chair, I would not say that there is no one to follow up. What I would want to suggest that it is not the Drainage Division responsibility to follow up on the requirements provided by the Town and Country Planning Division for a development. The drainage requirement is only one aspect of the requirement for the overall approval.
I'm not sure if I made my point clear enough. What I'm saying, somebody should have overall responsibility to review, or to at least to go back to that project and see what's happening.
And I'm agreeing with you, Vice Chair. And I believe there are bodies that do have that responsibility. But it is not the Drainage Division.
All right. So do you want to clarify for the public's information and for the committee's information who these bodies are and what their responsibilities would be?
Well, in the explanation given by the Director of Drainage, the process identified was outline approval given by Town and Country Planning Division. In that outline approval, there are a number of conditions that the developer is required to meet, drainage being one of them. So therefore, there must be a responsibility for the overall obtaining of these approvals, and that responsibility lies, to my knowledge, with two main agencies. One at the beginning of the process, Town and Country Planning Division, and at the end, and as it goes along, the corporation, because the final approval is given by the regional corporation, who ensures that all of the different approvals are obtained. I understand that given the situation that we may, focus in on one area, but that is not how a development is normally approved. I don't know if I've been clear enough, member, or if you...
In terms of national development, in structural development, whether it be in terms of housing or industry, what is the policy in dealing with stormwater, water that comes from the rainfall? It seems the present policy is just send it down into the drains and into the rivers. Has anyone suggested possibly doing rain harvesting, retention pod cisterns for putting the water? If we continue to just take all the storm water that falls and send them down into the drains and into the rivers, is the drainage division capable of carrying that volume of water consistently as we increase the amount of housing, the amount of industries, as the case may be? Or is there some plan to deal with this storm water that we can use in many different ways to assist? Right now we have a dry season that is coming up, that the WASA is putting out a dry season plan that we're going to have a shortage of water. Is there any policy to deal with this stormwater that is part of Trinidad and Tobago's annual rainfall?
Yes, in the context for developments, the developer is expected to store any, let's say, excess water on site before discharging into the watercourse. So part of the submission would be what we call, what is a pre-development discharge. So let's say a piece of land might be in virgin, and one would expect a certain amount of water to run off into a natural watercourse. But once it develops, it means it's more, you have more hard surface area. And he would be expected to store that additional water that you expect from hard surfaces so that it lets out into the natural stream as it was before. So yes, that is part of the requirement for the development.
I have not seen that in almost any of the housing areas in my constituency. I have not seen any work like that being done.
Member Mark?
I would like, through the chair, to ask, does the Drainage Division conduct any follow-up post-construction of housing projects to ensure compliance with guidelines that the Director of Drainage have indicated? And could you tell us whether these guidelines are legally enforceable, or are they purely cosmetic and sentimental? Could you clarify for us?
Member Mark, as the Drainage Director indicated previously, the process involves the developer coming to the Drainage Division for the guidelines. Once the guidelines are completed, the developer advises the Drainage Division, and the Drainage Division does a site visit to ensure that the infrastructure that has been recommended or has been agreed upon is implemented. And it's based on that site visit and then recommendation that the Drainage Division is able to advise the local government agency that the developer has undertaken the required and agreed upon infrastructure for the development. Yes.
These guidelines. Who issues these guidelines? Would it be the Drainage Division, the Town Country Planning Division, the Ministry of Works and Transport? Which agency, division within the Ministry of Works and Transport would prepare, formulate those guidelines? So I am constructing a property, I need to have proper drainage. Who do I come to with those guidelines to guide me to ensure that the designs I'm going to put down are proper and consistent and within the law of those guidelines? That is what I'm trying to find out. Who is responsible for the formulation of those guidelines that would guide me as a developer? That is what I'm trying to clarify.
All right, we are talking two different things here because you mentioned building of houses. We would just give guidelines for the infrastructure.
Okay.
The Town and Country Planning will give you guidelines for your buildings, maybe your density, maybe setbacks from your roadsides and things like that. The Town and Country will give you that. Our guidelines would be for the infrastructure works, your roads and drains, basically.
All right, well, can I follow up, Madam Director? Do you believe, as Director of the Drainage Division, the time has arrived to have these guidelines translated into legal clothing to have the force of law? Or do they have the force of law at this time? So if I breach those guidelines, you can take legal action against me. whether you went ahead and built or you didn't go, in terms of the infrastructure that you are talking about, are they legally enforceable? That is the point I'm trying to make.
Well, if one went ahead and built without approval, then the regional corporation is the body to take action.
No. I'm trying to clarify. Are these guidelines legally enforceable, or are they just guidelines, basically? Or are they legally enforceable?
They are guidelines for the developer to make the submission to us, engineering guidelines.
Madam, may I continue, please? Do you believe, Madam Secretary, Permanent Secretary, in your submission you indicated that the Drainage Division is going to be conducting follow-up post-construction of projects. Would you want to indicate to us whether this is a new development or has it been in existence for some time? And in those circumstances, whether you can indicate to this committee the resources provided will be adequate to carry out that monitoring function. Would you want to share with us?
The monitoring function that the Drainage Division would undertake would be the same as we would for all other projects. A project has its different phases. We plan for it. Then we implement based either in-house or we do it via contract. During the undertaking of the contract and the project, there is an engineer or an officer assigned to monitor the project, because that's the only way we would know whether or not our scope is being met. And based on the deliverables, then we can issue a certificate for payment. And then there is normally a post contract evaluation internal to see, to the extent lessons learned, whether or not the contractor was, how the contractor performed. There's a completion certificate that is done. And that is a standard practice that is done throughout the ministry in terms of projects.
Given recent experiences, particularly the October disaster, would you want to share with this committee some of the ministry's thoughts on ways and means of strengthening the Drainage Division function in the future, so that what occurred then, how can we avoid, as far as it's practically possible, in the future? What are your thoughts and recommendations that you'd like to share with this committee to strengthen the Drainage Division in carrying out its function?
I want to start by saying that the events of October, as indicated before, they were not a normal occurrence. It was abnormal in terms of the rainfall that occurred. And to directly link the activities of October with the functioning of the Drainage Division may be something of a bit of a stretch, because what occurred can quite easily be ascertained to a number of different entities and occurrences. It was not an issue simply identifiable with the Drainage Division. I think we need to make that abundantly clear. I can understand how one can make the connection, because we are talking about rainfall, we are talking about water courses, and so forth. So we speak to the Drainage Division. But we have a number of institutional issues that we need to deal with as a country, in terms of how we deal with, from an environmental perspective, how we deal with farming, how we deal with garbage disposal, a number of areas. When you come back now to the issue of some of the the things that stand out, and we've been discussing that now. Once again, you have a number of agencies in terms of approval process that may or may not have been undertaken. So after I've said all of that, to make it clear that it is not an issue that we are speaking to in terms of the drainage division, looking at it from a ministry's perspective, we have identified the need, of course, to try and ensure that our divisions are properly staffed. And the issue that happened in October, one of the things that we did clearly identify is the need for development of some better communication facilities and arrangements so that our response, we would ensure that our response is accurately coordinated with the other agencies. I don't know if I've responded how you may have wanted, Member Mark, but...
No, I'm good. Madam Chair, my final point. May I put on record, I am not accusing the Ministry of Works and Transport Drainage Division for what has happened in October, because I'm looking at your submission and this question about how do we go about as a ministry, with particularly your drainage division, in mitigating flooding in our country. And you outlined, that is the ministry, short-term, medium-term, and long-term solutions. And it is in that context I made the suggestion to you that you may want to share with our committee how can this committee help you, that is the ministry, drainage division, in strengthening its capacity so that in future, these perspectives that you have outlined, how can we help you in realizing those perspectives? So it is not to cast blame and to accuse anyone of what has happened. So I want you to clear and disabuse your mind of any implication that what I may have said led you to that conclusion. It is against what you have submitted. I'm trying to see how we can help.
Members, as you may realize, I'm very territorial where the Ministry of Works and Transport is concerned, but I did not in any way think that you were casting aspersion on the ministry.
Okay.
I simply took the opportunity because, as I said, drainage and water, they go together, and there may be a perception that it somehow redound to the drainage division of the Ministry of Works and Transport in this exercise. But I did not think you were casting any type of negative connotations to the ministry. But as you rightly said, we have outlined a short, a medium, and a long term, and it is our intention to seek to implement these projects to the best of our ability. As we've spoken to before, of course, we have need for increased staffing in certain areas. We are working with the necessary agencies for that staffing. We are continuing in the area of training, and of course there's always the monetary aspect, which we don't like to bring up because it is something that is across the board for everyone. Member.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Pierce. And I think there's just one area that I would just like to turn the discussion to before we come to a close, and it relates to the CREAP interchange and an article we had come across just this morning on the Express Online concerning the interchange. So I think it's an area we just wanted to get some answers to some questions. And firstly, I wanted to find out under what sub-item of the draft estimates of the development program would we find the construction of the CREAP interchange. Would it be consolidated fund? Would it be
infrastructure? It would be under the IDF for the Spain East-West Corridor Project 260.
260. Thank you very much. And in the article that we had seen, the article indicated that there was an increase in the number of properties to be compulsory acquired from 22 to 37, is that correct? Or is there an increase in a number from the original number at all?
Not to my knowledge, Madam Chair.
Not to your knowledge.
I will make sure and clarify for you.
Okay, thank you. And in terms of, the article also referred to the fact that a lot of leniency was shown to the residents in terms of their vacating the premises. So we would like to get an idea in terms of if there was any loss or increase in the costs, estimated cost of the project as a result of the loss of time, and if so, if that could be quantified in a figure.
So I will let the Director of Highways speak to this.
Thank you.
Basically, is a design-build contract, right? So basically, in a design-build contract, the contractor, for the first 6 months, carry out design works. The contractor has reached the point now where the designs are substantially completed, and he is in a position to start piling works. Since November 26, the contractor had given us notice that he need vacant possession of critical projects, of 3 critical projects that will allow him to carry on the piling works. Right? Since we got that letter from the contractor, we've been working closely with the residents to try and see if we could encourage them to give us what you call vacant possession. What I have learned is that the acquisition is done using compulsory acquisition proceedings. And under compulsory acquisition proceedings, each one of the residents can make an application for 80% of the offer given to them by the Commissioner of Valuation. And this 80%, based on my knowledge, is to allow them to relocate and start putting their lives in order while negotiation continues. So far, we were able to get, I think, 2 property owners took the offer of accepting the 80%. One of them will demolish, those buildings will be demolished this weekend. And these are critical properties that we needed. The other property owners, they of the view that they want to continue the negotiations until they could get some settlement, some higher settlement from what the COV has on the table. And they were not willing to grant us vacant possession to allow the project to continue. And it's because of the fact that the project is being delayed and the state is incurring cost. That's why the minister, yesterday we signed the warrants to request the people to relocate. But the offer of 80% is still on the table for everyone, and they can accept the offer.
What is the estimated completion date for this project?
The project is estimated at this point in time to be completed in December of 2019, this year.
And that estimated completion date is really tied to you getting possession immediately, or the fact that there's been a delay means that your estimated date will shift?
That was based on the delays that we have so far in the project. So you take into consideration the delays that we are presently experiencing.
So when you sign, when these, forget the term, but let's call them warrants, are signed for these, how many families are going to be forcefully removed?
At this point in time, there are 5 critical properties. They're all located on the southeastern quadrant that are urgently required.
How many families the chairman asked? You said 5 properties. Yeah. Do you have any idea how many families are involved?
No, it's 5 families.
5 families?
Yes.
Now, may I also ask through the chair, did you, I want to say you, the ministry, I know that one of the ways of seeking to persuade persons when their properties are being acquired is through private negotiations outside of utilizing the compulsory acquisition method. Could you tell us, first of all, whether that exercise was in fact executed, engaging them in private negotiation and treaty arrangements? And secondly, could you tell this committee what is the kind of cost that the state would have incurred as it relates to the commencement of the project? Because you just indicated that designs were completed in November. We are now in January. Any costs you would want to share with us as to what the state would have incurred since November to now?
No, well, I will be able to, I'll have to provide that in writing. At this point in time, I'm not familiar with the cost of the delays to date on the project. And with respect to your first question, when the project was conceptualized in 2013, the first letter we gave to the residents was a letter requesting from them to enter into private treaty arrangement for the acquisition of their properties. I think we got two of the property owners had given us submission that they are willing to proceed with private treaty arrangements. So we did try that. Basically, we normally will try private treaty before we go into compulsory acquisition.
And those two owners and so on were able to settle in terms of, as far as you're aware?
I think one of the owners who had given us a thing for private treaty, he accepted the 80% without prejudice. So he indicated that he's willing to relocate and allow negotiations to continue for a final settlement, but he will grant us vacant possession.
From your experience as the Director of Highways, would you say that this phenomena where you have resistance from households to being removed from their properties, is it something that is normal, natural, or is it, as far as you're concerned, a new kind of phenomena for you as at the level of the Director of Highways? Or that's a normal?
No, basically, in all the projects that we handle under the East-West Corridor, I think the behavior and the pattern is the same, because people are being affected, people unsure of how much compensation they maybe get. They're unsure of the fact that whether they will get compensation at the end. But what I always say is that they go through that phase. Every one of the properties we acquire, especially when we have to relocate a house, you do get the same kind of emotions.
Thanks, Madam Chair.
Dr. Boudou?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam PS, I just want to take you back to one of your earlier submissions in which you analyze the multiple factors involved in flooding, and to say that I agree with your analysis, and to ask whether you would give support, what are your thoughts on, and whether you would give support to the establishment of what I would term a flood commission, which would comprise multiple agencies with a view to analyzing what has happened not only this past year, but in previous years, and to plot the way going forward. Because I believe because of the climate change issues and other issues, that flooding is going to be a threat for us. Would you share your thoughts on that with us, and whether you would be willing to support that kind of project?
Vice Chair, the type of commission that you speak of, I imagine, would have to be something coming out from an executive decision based on the information provided by all the different agencies. If something of that nature were formed, of course, the ministry would give all support, because at the end of the day, I want to believe that we are all working together to seek to mitigate this issue that we have in terms of flooding. One might want to consider it on a wider basis, because there are a number of issues coming out of climate change, and I'm not sure at what level you may want to deal with it.
So, Madam PS, I want to invite you to make any closing statements if you wish. I think I've heard you made some omnibus statements during the whole inquiry, but if you wish, we'll allow you to do such.
So, Madam Chair, I hope I did not in any way affect the committee's time if I did not respond in a direct manner. But, you know, these issues are really broad and far-reaching, and the ministry as a whole, we have quite a number of different areas that we deal with. What I do want to say, though, is that one of the things, and I have made this statement before, we want to express our appreciation to the committee because it always gives us an opportunity, an additional opportunity to examine the way that we do things. And each time you call us in a different area, we put an added spotlight on it. Coming out of some of your suggestions, we definitely will go back and take a look at some of the areas, Madam Chair, that bridge culvert, that overpass will be looked at by the Director of Highways. Member Mark, thank you. We will be looking a little closer because we do understand that sometimes when we do these mathematical assumptions or summations, we may get a picture that may not be the real picture. So we will go and we will get the details and we will submit it in writing. And once again, on behalf of everyone at the table, we take the opportunity to wish you a bright and prosperous new year and a very effective 2019.
Thank you, Madam Pearson. On behalf of the committee and on my own behalf, I want to thank you, Deputy PS Ramdas, Deputy PS Jagrup, Director of Highways Ram Singh, Program Director Pure Philip, Director of Finance and Accounts Mrs. Ahau Lovell, Ms. Chattergoon, Ms. Moore, Mr. Garib Singh, Ms. Weber, Mr. Koilas, and Ms. Gil Conloon for a very interesting afternoon and discussion, which I think has enlightened us all and also the members of the public. I also want to thank the members of the media and the members of the public who have stayed with us this afternoon. I now suspend this meeting and excuse you all and wish you all a safe journey home. Thank you very much. Pleasant evening all.